Okay. Are you ready? Thank you so much for coming today. We've got a really nice bunch of you. You know, if you were cows, I would be very happy. I'd feel like they didn't let many run by, you know. This program actually came to me two years ago. I was reading a poem aloud to H.C. Palmer and Warren Oblak on the terrace of the Grand Central Hotel in Cottonwood Falls, Kansas. And Palmer was fraternity brothers with B.H. Fairchild. And incidentally, can you hear me? Yes. Everybody can hear me, even Chad. Okay. And we were smoking cigars and drinking whiskey, and HC handed me a rough draft, or sort of more than a rough draft, of a poem called Revenge that entered into the subject of fathers, the relationships between fathers and sons, and their particular predicament that he was a poet. He was an up-and-coming poet, and his father ran a machine shop in Oklahoma. And so I planned to have him come, and he was headed this way until about 3 weeks ago. And he called me, and he just felt, he said to me, they've just changed my medicine. Honestly, Sean, I doubt if I'm going to do another poetry reading in my life. And so at least not that he would have to travel a long way to do. And so when we hung up the phone, I called this fellow I had been thinking about bringing from the start, and that just happened to be George Bilgere, and put it on his voicemail, and within a half an hour I had him signed up, and I want to give him an applause right now. I knew I
needed the work.
You know, he had a weekend off, and anyway, I knew I had to have John. John and I read at the Miami Book Fair in 2019, and we became friends. And more cigars and whiskey, and they have remarkable pedigrees, and we have this great program. And I want you to read about them, and when you go home, I want you to go online and look them up, both of them. And anyway, this is about fathers and sons. Sometimes that's a less than ideal thing, and they're going to cover it today in their writings as they read them. And I'm going to read the great all-time father-son poem, Those Winter Sundays, by Robert Hayden. Sundays, too, my father got up early and put his clothes on in the blue-black cold. Then, with cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather, made banked fires blaze. No one ever thanked him. I'd wake and hear the cold splintering, breaking. When the rooms were warm, he'd call. And slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house, speaking indifferently to him who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? I give you John Balaban.
Well, thank you all.
Never thought of a poetry based on talking about your father, but I did that in some books of my poetry. I had as many of us have, a difficult time with my father. I ran away from home when I was like 16 and a half. I was still in high school, and I was heading out to California in the middle of the winter from Pennsylvania. And I went to say goodbye to the high school teacher I had, who was really tolerant of me, my art teacher. And she said, well, stay here a minute. And she said, I need to talk to her husband. And I ended up finishing high school, living with her and her husband. And I never really was close to my dad again. Afterwards, I managed to get myself off into college. And then years later, I started writing, publishing. And I was out in Taos, New Mexico at the Helene Wurlitzer Foundation. And I got a call that my dad wanted to come visit me. Well, it was 3,000, 2,000 some miles away. So he flew out, and we had this visit together. And the poem's called Driving Back East with My Dad. I still see him through the Instamatic, standing before the great dunes of southern Rockies, a slow wind pulling streams of sand across his knees as the dunes loomed behind him and he squinted at the camera, baseball cap over his long white hair, 75, and about to ride 2,000 miles in my old pickup. In his Romanian village, he is still remembered for making, at 12, a die for counterfeiting coins. At 14, not many years after the Wright brothers and Kitty Hawk, he flew a model plane over the cornfields of his Schwabe neighbors. By 18, he was a roundhouse foreman in the Carpathians. At 19, swimming the Danube to an island where Turks sold their heavenly tobacco. He almost drowned until a Tatar girl jumped in to haul him out. At 21, he came with scarcely a word of English, joined the U.S. Army as a cavalry officer, but was obliged to resign his commission after clobbering his superior with a weighted rotting crop. In World War II, working at the Philadelphia Naval Yard, he invented the C-130 flying boxcar, and I still have the blueprints for that. Later in Scranton, lunching with his staff of engineers, he made them walk out of the Purple Cow restaurant when the maitre d' wouldn't serve his new black dressman. One of his inventions, a stepladder ironing board high chair, got us on the 50s show, The Big Idea. I sat in the chair. He went bankrupt twice, had a wicked temper, once mortifying my mother by tossing her bowl of soup into a rude waiter's face and chasing him into the kitchen. At 16, to our mutual relief, I ran away from home. Can't say we said much on the ride. A mere detour on his long, crooked path. As the miles rolled past, we only stopped for diner food, gas, or motels, where we'd sip his Jack Daniels and watch TV from our beds. 5 days of driving with a biblical start. Black skies slamming down thunder, rips of lightning, and even a tornado that churned up a wheat field near Le Mans as we rattled along into Kansas. Hail whacking my truck, thumping off the cab and hood and clattering the back bed with ice. He just turned off his hearing aid, seemed pleased with his ride through the high plains. How I wish for a lyric ending to this prose tale, a moment when the travelers, going in the direction they faced, found they had already arrived. Can you hear me okay? Back there? Okay. I worry about my voice. It's called Words from My Daughter, So it's about this father. About 8 of us were nailing up forts in the mulberry grove behind Red's house when his mother started screeching, and all of us froze except Red's, 14, huge as a hippo, who sprang out of the tree so fast the branch nearly bobbed me off. So fast he hit the ground running, hammer in hand, and seconds after he got in the house, we heard thumps like someone beating a tire off a rim, his dad's howls, the screen door banging open, saw Red's burrowing out through the tall weeds toward the highway, the father stumbling after his fat son, who never looked back across the thick swale of Teasel and Black-Eyed Susans until it was safe to yell at the skinny drunk stamping around barefoot and holding his ribs. Another time, the Connolly kid came home to find his alcoholic mother getting raped by the milkman. Bobby broke a milk bottle and jabbed the guy humping on his mom. I think it really happened because none of us would ever mention that wraith of a woman who slippered about her house and never talked to anyone, not even her kids. Once a girl ran past my porch with a dart in her back, her open mouth pumping like a guppy's and her eyes wild. Later that summer, or maybe the next, the kids hung her brother from an oak. Before they hoisted him, yowling and heavy on the clothesline, they made him claw the creek bank and eat worms. I don't know why his neck didn't snap. Now, Red's had another nickname you couldn't say, or he'd beat you up. Honey Bun. His dad called him that when Red's was little. So these were my playmates. I love them still for their justice and valor and desperate loves, twisted in shapes of hammer and shard. I want you to know about their pain and about the pain they could loose on others. And if you're reading this, I hope you'll think, well, my dad had it rough as a kid, so what? If you're reading this, you can read the news, and you know that children suffer worse. Worse, for me, is a cloud of memories still drifting off the South China Sea, like the 9-year-old boy, naked and lacerated, thrashing in his pee on a steel operating table and yelling, "Dow, Dow," while I, trying to translate in the mayhem of Tet for surgeons who didn't know who this boy was or what had happened to him, kept asking, where's the pain, until the surgeon said, forget it, his ears are blown. I remember your first Halloween when I held you on my chest and rocked you. So small your toes didn't touch my lap, as I smelled your fragrant peony head and cried because I was so happy and because I heard, in no metaphorical way, the awful chorus of Sir Anisette's orphans writhing in their cribs. Then the doorbell rang, and a tiny green beret was saying trick or treat, and I thought, uh-oh, but I remembered it was Halloween and where I was. I smiled at the evil midget, his map light and night pain, his rubber knife for slitting throats, said, "How you doing, soldier?" And still holding you asleep in my arms, gave him a Mars bar. To his father, waiting outside in fatigues, I hissed, "You shit," and saw his child in a pose I know too well. I want you to know the worst and be free from it. I want you to know the worst and still find good. Day by day. Day by day, as you play nearby or laugh with the ladies at People's Bank, as I go around town and I find myself beaming like a fool, I suspect I'm here less for your protection than you are here for mine, as if you were sent to call me back into our helpless tribe. Another poem, this one's for my daughter, who's now 38 and a doctor. but she was just a little thing when I kept, I guess, in the politics of the time, the distress of being in Vietnam, doing what I did in Vietnam, I kept going on these hitchhiking. Like I crossed the U.S. maybe 5 times that way, coast to coast, talking to people, seeing what they're up to. So Daddy out hitchhiking at 3 a.m. Finally, it was just me and the katydids, cranking out night songs in clumps of willows, by a barn roofed in moonlight, by a rye field luminous with dew. I stepped off the highway, ribboning out through the valley, walked through the weeds to a pond, gathering vapors. Angels see the way I saw that night, when only large shapes loomed and all my thoughts were laid aside, as I searched the night opening before me, and soul shuffled out of self to sing with katydids chattering in murky trees. All beasts are kind with divine instruction. The pair of ducks slept beneath their wings. Minnows wavered in the moon-charmed creek where a muskrat hunched and licked its paws, listening, like me, to insects calling, searching and calling at the end of summer. This is what Daddy was doing the August you were born, wandering off alone on highways, walking off highways into the night, calming ahead loud with the past, listening to things that make a song. Passing through Albuquerque. At dusk by the irrigation ditch, gurgling past backyards near the highway, locust raise a maze of calls and cottonwoods. A Spanish girl in a white party dress strolls a levee by the muddy water where her small sister plunks in stones. Beyond a low adobe wall and a wrecked car, men are pitching horseshoes in a dusty lot. Someone shouts as it clangs in a ringer. Big winds buffet ahead of a storm, rocking the immense trees and whipping up clouds of dust, wild leaves, and cotton wool. In the moment when the locusts pause and the girl presses her up-fluttering dress to her bony knees, you can hear a banjo, guitar, and fiddle playing the Mississippi Sawyer inside a shack. Moments like that, you can love this country. I might just do this last poem. How am I for time, boss? Yeah, okay. This is a prose poem. I know this is a reading about fathers. This one's about my mother. It's a prose poem called The Gift of Morning Water. I guess it needs some preface. I was invited by a group of Tiwa Indians on a reservation just above the New Mexico-Colorado border for a peyote evening. Sounds very polite, right? But there are no cards or anything. They just word of mouth, let me go. After the long night with cold wind riffling the scream of the teepee lit like a lantern on the deserted prairie, a night of chills in the small of the back, aches and crossed legs. After all the hours of chanting from Indians and Anglos, after their drumming on the iron kettle stretched with hide, its water-filled belly bellowing when tipped, after the prayers sung for forgiveness, for guidance from the grandfather peyote on the crescent of sand, after chewing bitter buttons, swallowing dry powder, after drumming and the singing and the sweet sage thrown on the dazzling fire. As the embers died and dawn finally rinsed the top of the tent, The road chief, an elderly Tiwa, who throughout the night had asked him to show us the right road, said, "A woman is coming with morning water. Listen to her. She is your mother." An old Pueblo woman crawled through the tent flap, short of breath, and shoving before her on the teepee sand a steel bucket, water sloshing, ladle clanking, and I turned with exhaustion, with disappointment. For all night long I had sat eating the medicine, going out only once under the huge roaring stars to take a leak and return, and nothing really had happened. And then she spoke with puffy, tired lips and said, "You have done a good thing here tonight. Drink this water and be refreshed." And every syllable that came from her was perfectly the voice of my own mother, dead for many years. Stunned and now weeping, I sat as the bucket came around to me, wept hard at hearing her voice again. I have a friend in Vermont who, for a full week after his father's death, kept calling the family answering machine just to hold a bit longer to his father's voice. And here I was made a gift I hadn't known how much I wanted, the voice that called my name the first morning of my life. One more. This is a friend who I think some of you may know, a guy named Elling Ide, who lived on the West Coast and had a ranch somewhat like yours, Sean. And he also was a great translator of ancient Chinese, and that's how we connected, because I translated some ancient Vietnamese in the course of being there and later. So here's the poem. Around dawn, the hurricane died and neighbors crept out to see. This is at our house in Miami. Around dawn, the hurricane died and neighbors crept out to see their snap trees, lawns littered with leaf mulch and roof bits blown into heaps with siding, broken birds, and snakes. By afternoon, the chainsaws were screaming in the sickening heat, and the bulldozers began to scrape the rotting tonnage from the streets. That's when Elling drove over from Sarasota in his old VW van, packed with candles, with dog food, cat food, flashlights, and batteries, jugs of water, a frozen cake, icing, crackers, caviar, a chilled case of Tsingtao beer, chainsaw blades, and tropical trees to plant the place again. In a few years, our new ylang-ylang tree rose 30 feet, unfurling long yellow blossoms to fill our evenings with attar of Chanel. And so it went with Elling's palms, his gumbo limbo, Cuban guanabana, papaya, bananas, and bamboo, the house again shaded, overhung with bougainvillea, trellised in passion vine, scented by gardenia, by Burmese orchids that drink the humid air. Once again, parrots flocked the sea grape for its fruit. The birds, quote, this is an Elling quote, assembled as if to audit the Dharma, as Elling once translated Li Po's poems. And now, like the Taoist poet, Elling has gone off somewhere, and our thoughts for him, like the river Wen, go rolling southward endlessly. Thank you.
Thank you. So I forgot to mention that we have two books debuting here. And one is John's compilation just out from Copper Canyon Press. It's so new that we could almost not get it. And George has a brand new chapbook. And so they are fabulous books. I have both of them, and I recommend them highly. George, will you come and do some poetry for us?
Well, okay. Thank you, Jackie Jacobs and Sarah Wilson and Sean Sexton, for making this visit possible for John and for me. It's just been a magical couple of days so far, and hearing you read your poems. The problem with that, doing that before I read, I heard some poems that were really intimidating. And so now I'm feeling nervous about my own work, so I think I'll just leave. So, no, those were really wonderful, so thank you very much. I'm going to open with by reading a couple of very short stanzas from a favorite poet of mine named John Balaban. I want you to listen to these two short stanzas and listen to how John describes how a poem comes to be. Nicely like a pearl is a poem, begun with an accidental speck from the ocean of the actual, a grain, a grit, which, once admitted, irritates the mantle of thought and coats itself in lacquers of the mind. Wow. That's what a poem is. So, there's an old saying in the poetry business, nothing lasts forever, except a poetry reading. So I will say to you what Elizabeth Taylor said to each of her 7 husbands: I won't keep you long. So I'm like the world's oldest relatively new dad, and I'm in the process of teaching my 7-year-old son. I know he's a little behind the curve in this particular area, but we're working on teaching him to ride a bike. And so I thought of this poem of mine called Like Riding a Bicycle. I would like to write a poem about how my father taught me to ride a bicycle one soft twilight, a poem in which he was tired and I was scared, unable to disbelieve in gravity and believe in him as the fireflies were coming out and only enough light remained for one more run, his big hand at the small of my back, pulling away like a gantry at a missile launch. And this time I wobbled into flight, caught a balance I would never lose, and pulled away from him as he eased, laughing, to a stop. A poem in which I said that even today, as I make some perilous adult launch, like pulling away from my wife into the fragile new balance of our life apart, I can still feel his steadying hand, still hear that strong voice telling me to embrace the sweet fall forward into the future's equilibrium. But, of course, he was drunk that night, still wearing his white shirt and tie from the office, the air around us sick with scotch. And the challenge was keeping his own balance as he coaxed his bulk into a trot beside me in the hot night, sweat soaking his armpits, the eternal flame of his cigarette flaring as he gasped, and I fell again and again, entangled in my gleaming Schwinn, until he swore and stomped off into the house to continue working with my mother on their own divorce, their balance long gone and the hard ground already rising up to smite them, while I stayed outside in the dark, still falling, until at last I wobbled into the frail, upright delight of feeling sorry for myself, riding alone down the neighborhood's black street like the lonely Western hero I still catch myself in the act of performing. And yet, having said all this, I must also say that this summer evening is very beautiful, and I am older than my father ever was. As I coast the Pacific shoreline on my old bike, the gears clicking like years, the wind touching me for the first time, it seems in a very long time, with soft urgency all over. So I was saying to Sean something about being given a theme. That's hardly ever happened to me. And usually when you go out on the road to give a reading, you have your kind of established playlist that you know works. So this has messed all that up, and it's exciting for me to see what's going to happen today with these poems, all about being a son and being a father. This one's called Taking Out the Trash. I remember as a child watching my father take out the trash at the frozen crack of dawn, cursing as he dragged the stinking cans to the curb and thinking, that's not something I'm ever going to do. In other ways, I was a model son, standing at the mirror as he shaved, dabbing the warm cream on my cheek, dreaming of a razor and whiskers of my very own. Watching him light up as he read the Sunday paper, one eye squinted against smoke and bad news, had me reading the funnies before I could even read. My eye squinted against nothing. And the deft, one-handed way he straightened his fedora's brim, while at the same time adjusting the coordinates of rake and tilt, makes me regret that the hat, like my father, has vanished, along with the strop and razor and lathery bowl of curds. Even smoking and the Sunday paper are on their way out. These are the losses I'm mourning this morning as I drag the stinking trash cans to the curb. John mentioned some extraordinary historical facts about his father, and there's one, I don't think I have anything to match that, but except for one odd fact. My father went to a military school on the outskirts of St. Louis, a place called Western Military Academy, and I didn't realize this for many years, but my aunt and I went out to visit this place some years back, long after it had closed down. But there was a little museum commemorating its time as Western Military Academy. There was a picture of my dad, who was on the tiny little football team, a small team of small athletes. And there's my dad, number 11, carrying his leather helmet, standing next to this big, strapping blonde kid, number 17. It was Paul Tibbett, who dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. And so those two guys had very different futures awaiting them. My father was destined to inherit the largest Chevrolet company in St. Louis, founded by my granddad, Bilgere Chevrolet. So this poem is called Graduates of Western Military Academy. One day, as this friend of my father, Paul, was flying over Asia, he vaporized a major Japanese city. True story. They'd been chums at a military academy in Illinois back in the 30s. My father was the star, best in Latin, best in riflery and history, best in something called recitation, and best at looking serious. In the old yearbooks, he has exactly the look you were supposed to have back then, about 52% duty, 48% integrity, 0% irony. But somehow, all my father got to do later on was run his own car dealership. A big one, but still, while Paul got to blow up Japan. My father ushered in the latest models. Paul ushered in the atomic age. It seems unfair, but there you are. Paul had been an indifferent Latin scholar, weak in history and recitation. For these and other reasons, my father took a refreshing swim across a large, inviting lake of gin, complete with strange boats and exotic shorebirds, which resulted in his interment under some shady acres I occasionally visit, while Paul went on for decades, always giving the same old speech. Yes, he'd done the right thing, no doubt about it. He improved his skills at recitation and developed a taste for banquet food. To this day, he struggles with his weight. So enough poems about my father and fathering for a minute. My mother was part of all this too. And as I said last night at the reading, the wonderful reading last night, the great evening, I guess the central event in my childhood, my early years, and certainly for my family was my father's alcoholism, which destroyed the marriage, destroyed the business, the Chevrolet company, and in a sense became that central primal tragedy to which I have returned as a writer again and again. So it shows up in my poetry everywhere. This is a poem for my mother, who ended up living in California, working as a nurse, raising the three of us. It's not the one I read last night. It's called Schwinn. The Schwinn bicycle makes another appearance. One day, my mother astonished me by getting astride my bike. My heavy old balloon-tired Schwinn I used for my afternoon paper route, and pedaling away down the street. Skirt flying back, hair blown back, a girl again in the wind and speed that had nothing to do with pulling double shifts at the hospital or cooking meatloaf or sewing up my jeans. The old bike carrying her away from my father dead of booze and her own nightly bottle of red wine in front of the news. She flew down the road so far I could barely see her, then slowly pedaled back to me and stepped off the bike, my mom again. So an indelible memory of my childhood and perhaps the last year we were all together as a family, a memory of my father when we still lived in St. Louis, and my father was going through his struggles. The poem is called The Forge. I remember watching my father stop halfway up the driveway because my tricycle was blocking the way to the garage, and how he solved the problem by picking up the tricycle by the handlebars and smashing it through the windshield of our brand new family station wagon, his face red with scotch, his black tie and jacket flapping with effort, the tricycle making its way a little farther with each blow into the roomy interior of the latest model. As the safety glass relented, the tricycle and the windshield, both praiseworthy for their toughness, the struggle between them somehow making perfect sense in midday on our quiet suburban street. The windshield, the anvil, the trike, the hammer, the marriage, the forge, and failure glowing in the heat, beaten and tempered, slowly taking shape. So this would go with that allusion to smoking. You don't see many people smoking anymore, do you? That's just kind of going away, and it seems unbelievable. It was such a central fact of our lives for so many decades. So I was sitting at a cafe a couple of summers ago, and this happened. And my father pops up in this poem. It's called Matchbook. When the last smoker has smoked the last cigarette, I'm going to miss that deft, backhanded, loose-wristed wave, the 2 or 3 quick snaps whereby they put out their match. How it flared and died into a smoky elegy. Because the young woman over there, lighting up, just did that magician's trick to conjure my father from 50 years away. He takes a deep, glorious drag, then looks back down at his newspaper and vanishes into whatever it is the dead are reading about these days. So suddenly in the course of this reading, I have children. And here is a poem about my son Michael at age 5. And of course, all of you who are parents know that what endlessly fascinates you is the difference between your perception of time and their perception of time. This poem is called Avocados. My son comes into the kitchen and asks if he can have an avocado. Avocado, he says, loving the weight of each green syllable on his tongue. Avocados represent an immense step for him, an evolutionary leap, far beyond the narrow confines of cornflakes wherein he has dwelt for so long. The breast, the cornflake, the avocado. Such has been his journey thus far. You'll have to wait till they're ripe, I tell him. You want some cornflakes instead? No thanks, he says, and wanders back into the world of being 5, while I'm doing the dishes at this point. I start thinking about ripening and how glad I am that it takes time, and his own ripening will be years in the making. Years, I say aloud, enjoying that long, luxurious syllable like a cat stretching out on my tongue. As Michael comes in again, it's been 5 minutes, and asks, "Are they ripe yet?" "No, not quite yet, honey. Want some cornflakes in the meantime?" "That's okay," he says. "I'll wait." And back to my parents before I was even around. It's a poem called Salad, and I love thinking of them as they must have been in the early days of their marriage. It is a summer evening in 1948. My mother and father are in the backyard of the little duplex they rented. Summer evening in St. Louis. I have yet to exist, but nonetheless, I know that 2 hamburgers are on the grill and the beer is cold in the humid dusk. A dog barks next door. My father turns the burgers. My mother goes in to set the table for 2 and make a salad. There's more beer in the fridge. They don't even have a TV. Nobody does. In the kitchen that does not include me, the burgers are great. My father says something that makes my mother laugh so hard that I can hear her in my backyard tonight in Cleveland, where thanks to them, I exist at the grill, a beer in my hand, a dog barking, my wife in the kitchen making a salad. Parents here, I bet you kept this tally as you were raising your kids. How many trips to the ER? For our first 2 so far, the second 1, and little Alex was taken to the ER because he was injured in the ER where we were with Michael. Alex fell off a chair. So it was a very quick trip. This is a poem for Michael, and there's a word in it I should tell you. The word is Phidian, P-H-I-D-I-A-N. Phidias was an ancient Greek sculptor noted for the beauty and delicacy of his busts of the human head. The poem is called The Scar. My son slipped on the ladder to the pool and smacked his head. Blood calling on his small shoulders, the doctor stitching him whole. 3 years on, after a haircut, that scar still rises. A quarter moon, a woman will ask about as they lie there one night. Her fingers in his hair, her voice in his ear, the secret delight of him, a bit like burnt toast in her nostrils as she takes his strangeness into her. What she won't know is how the frail Phidian skull I held in my hands that day resounded on the hot concrete. It echoed all summer, less like an egg cracking in a bowl or a world breaking than the wild beating of love against my heart. Dear girl, who will one day win him, that part of the boy is mine. And I think I'll just read one more poem. This is the perfect moment. This is about something my dad did with me when I was little, and probably most of you here have experienced this. The poem is called Weather, and I chose this poem to end the reading with because it puts me in the middle of the continuum. My dad behind me, my son in front of me. Or maybe it's the other way around. Weather. My father would lift me to the ceiling in his big hands and ask, "How's the weather up there?" And it was good. The weather of being in his hands, his breath of scotch and cigarettes, his face smiling from the world below. "Oh, Daddy," was the lullaby I sang back down to him as he stood on earth. My great white-shirted father, home from work, his gold wristwatch and wedding band gleaming as he held me above him for as long as he could before his strength failed. Down there in the world I find myself standing in tonight. My little boy, looking down from his flight below the ceiling, cradled in my hands, his eyes wide and already staring into the distance beyond the man, asking him again and again, "How's the weather up there?" Thank you very much. Thanks.
As you all know, there is a barbecue coming. Before we do that, though, we do have a special announcement that's going to be made by Jackie Jacobs, the Laura Riding Jackson Foundation president. So if you all stay seated while we do this, Jackie's making her way up to the front. After that, there is time for more raffle tickets, more silent auction buying, some more drinks. And then if you haven't been out on the patio yet, that is where the barbecue takes place. So you'll make your way out there and we'll all spend some time socializing. And there is a book signing immediately after, before you leave the room, right at the back there. You can buy books by our poets. You can get them signed. You can ask some questions if you like. So yes, there is a little bit of an opportunity to buy some books and chat with them. Thank you for that reminder. Okay. Yes. I need to switch this for you.
Okay. These events don't happen by themselves. It takes your support as people who want to share great poetry. It requires your donations and your willingness to come and spend time with us. And it takes a group of people who do all the work to make it happen. So I'd like to ask our board members to stand, please. Come on, there's more of you here. And standing in the middle is Renee Van de Voorde, who started this organization. He was Laura's attorney, and we are in our 32nd year now, so thank you so much. The people with their eyes on the date and the time and everything that has to be done to happen. Sarah Wilson, our executive director. Standing in the back, Ren Counts. Wave your hand, Ren, so they can all see. Do a fabulous job of bringing everything together for us. And the afternoon would not be the afternoon without the poets from our writers group and our amazing guest poets. So thank you all again. There's a man who's made all of this happen for the last 13 years. And I first met Sean in 1989. His sister-in-law, Donna Olson, hired me to come to this school district. And I met Sean and Sharon, was fortunate to spend time in their home over those years. And getting to know him in this role as a member of our board and poet laureate of Indian River County has really been a joy for me. So Sean, if you would come up. Our board would like to present you with this award.
Oh, wow.
And it says, in celebration of Sean Sexton, Indian River County Poet Laureate 2016 to 2020, 2020 to 2024, the board of the Laura Writing Jackson Foundation honors his leadership in advancing our mission as the literary hub of Indian River County. Thank you, Sean. Are you surprised?
Thank you. I didn't know you were going to do that.
You weren't supposed to know.
Well, I'm completely honored, but I'll tell you the truth. It has just been a wonderful thing for me. I have been connecting all this time with poetry in the world, and we've had some fabulous people here, and this year has been no exception. The other thing I want you to know is I think the world of you. Thank you.
And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Chad for always being supportive. And I encourage you, if you do not already know about our wonderful book center downtown, to frequent them. We're so fortunate to have a local bookstore, and they always run up and help us to celebrate the written word. So thank you.
Okay, it's time to party. Thanks for coming. Please feel free to buy more raffle tickets. I got to say it one last time. And when we have our barbecue outside, that is where we're going to do the raffle winnings. So please, if you're going to leave and you want to win something, please try to stick around till 6 o'clock because that's when the drawing is. Okay, thanks everyone.